Picture this. The states of Vermont and Wyoming are given no food at all, and their populations average out to 800 million combined. Now, imagine that the states of New Hampshire and California are given as much as they want. Now, in this fairy tale fiction land, we see that the United States would not stand for this, if it were to be realistic, theoretically. Now, however, when looking towards the country of India, according to a report done by Foreign Policy dated August 11, 2013, this fiction becomes a reality, as 800 million are starving and given malnutrition in the country of India. And the elitists within the country are giving an abundance of food, and this distribution, and this gap in the middle is quite frankly not filled. And unfortunately, this leads many to be skeptical of whether or not India can become a successful nation. However, in recent times, according to the Washington Post of yesterday, the lower house actually passed a food security bill, which allows for $32 billion to be invested in feeding the hungry in India. But many are critical and skeptical of this. So therefore, we have to ask ourselves today's question: will the new bill passed by the lower house be successful in fighting poverty, or rather hunger, in India? And the answer to this question is no, for the following three reasons. First, because of the ambiguity that comes with distribution. Secondly, because of the perplexity of the fact that infrastructure should be prioritized. And lastly, because of the fact that this does not give incentive for the families that are given the food. Now, first, we have to realize that this food aid is unfortunately missing a significant factor. Indeed, according to The Economist dated just yesterday, this new legislation does not take into account identification problems that have not precluded a solution. Indeed, unfortunately for the country itself, distribution would be meant by means of identification. And quite frankly, as the article goes on to elaborate, 2/5 of the country itself do not have any form of identification to back it up. And therefore, they would be forced to not use means of identification and give out ratios of food in quite frankly, blind-eyed. And according to a Foreign Affairs report dated just last week, this poses an even more moral threat, as the article goes on to elaborate, that if this food security bill were in fact to be passed, while one family would be giving two ratios, another family wouldn't be given any at all. And unfortunately, because of the bill being so vague, it leads to a more problematic situation, and therefore needs to be mitigated by means of readjusting the means of identification. And therefore, clearly this legislation is going to fail due to the fact that they haven't met the means of distribution due to the fact that identification has become so problematic in the country itself. And therefore, they must prioritize identification before they can pass this legislation in the upper house. But secondly, we have to realize that the country itself hasn't dealt with the problem of infrastructure. According to a report done by the New York Times, dated May 11, 2013, infrastructure poses a significant problem to poverty in the country, as the government in the past has tried to feed its people, but has seen a problem that has become a pothole in its way. Now, this problem is the theft of Bangladesh and Pakistanis. Indeed, according to a report done by the Washington Post, dated just yesterday, Bangladesh citizens and that of Pakistani citizens have passed the Indian border to look for government aid due to the fact that their governments do not have anything. And therefore, with this new legislation recently passed, it poses future potential for the countries refugees in these countries coming into India, and therefore border security and infrastructure means have to in fact be instilled before the country can prioritize readjusting $32 billion into this food plan, due to the fact that this food plan isn't essentially guaranteeing that means of infrastructure, or the infrastructure pothole isn't going to become problematic for this legislation. And therefore, because it poses a clear threat for the people, and therefore the legislation will not be successful. But lastly, we have to realize that this does not give incentive for the people of India to take the food that they're given. Indeed, according to a survey done by the recent Gallup poll dated just 2 days ago, it reports that almost 2/3 of all Indians in poverty, out of 800 million, state that they're not willing to take the food that's given in this given by this legislation, due to the fact that they have pride in their abilities. Now, these 800 million have indeed adjusted to life in poverty, but unfortunately do not believe that they're willing to take free handouts. Indeed, according to a report done by The Economist dated August 11th, 2012, Indians Indians in poverty do not believe that handouts are the way, are the way to become successful, and therefore hunt and gather on their own, and believe that handouts are a mean of disgrace, and therefore this disgrace will become problematic for their ability. For the ability of this legislation to in fact be enacted, and therefore poses a threat of immigrants and refugees coming in to take to pose as citizens and take the food themselves, and therefore this legislation is in fact going to fail in the long term. So therefore, when re-examining today's question, will the recent food bill passed by India's lower house be successful in fighting poverty in India? The answer to this question is no, for the 3 reasons that we've discussed. Thank you. There's no way I'm going over that.